I never thought I would find myself in a situation like this. My name, Jack, and I've been married to Lisa for almost 10 years. At first, it felt like a fairy tale. We met in college, fell madly in love, and decided to build a life together. I thought we had something special, something that would last. But lately, something changed. Our once cozy home felt like a battlefield, and I was the last soldier standing. Initially, the signs were subtle. Lisa started coming home late from her yoga classes, often with a few more excuses about work. There was a time when she would call me if she was going to be late, but that pattern faded away. I chalked it up to her wanting more independence or maybe just having a busy social life. But as the weeks went by, my gut feeling grew heavier. The sweet texts I used to receive turned into short and rushed messages, like she was texting me just out of obligation. I even noticed her casually changing her phone password, which was a strange thing to do. One day, I was cleaning out the garage when I stumbled across a receipt that made my heart drop. It was for a fancy restaurant and the date was recent. And there it was, the name of a guy I didn't recognize, Derek. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but my mind raced back to the landscaping crew we hired a few months ago. I recalled how Lisa would often chat with the landscaper, a guy in his late 20s, and how she would giggle more than usual around him. It felt wrong then, and now it felt like a massive slap in the face. I confronted her that night. I remember how I paced around the kitchen, my hands shaking, unsure of how to approach the topic. Finally, I managed to say, "Lisa, who is Derek?" The moment the name left my lips, I saw her pulse quicken. "What do you mean?" she replied, her voice a mix of confusion and annoyance. But I pressed on, storming through my growing list of suspicions. "I found a receipt for a dinner and it's not our anniversary. You need to tell me the truth." Her face morphed from confusion to defensiveness. "Oh, come on, Jack, you're being ridiculous. Derek is just a coworker. We had a work-related meeting and the restaurant was the only place available," she fired back. The lie was so blatant that I felt my blood boil. "Really? Because it sounds like you're hiding something," I retorted, the anger bubbling over. That night I got a mix of anger and tears from her, an emotional cocktail that left me dizzy. She claimed that I was being controlling and paranoid. I wanted to believe her, but every word felt like a dagger. The more she spoke, the more I realized that I was standing in front of an elaborate web of lies. The emotional impact hit me like a freight train. I went from anger to despair in the blink of an eye. I had never felt so violated and betrayed in my life. I loved Lisa, and the thought of her with someone else, it shattered me. I spent sleepless nights wrestling with my thoughts, thinking of the life we built together, the memories we shared, and how she could throw it all away so easily. After a week of digging deeper into my suspicions and gathering evidence, I reached a boiling point. I decided I could no longer ignore the signs. It was time to take action. I needed to find out the truth once and for all, and that would set me on a course I never thought I'd travel. This wasn't just about infidelity. It was about respect, love, and the life I thought we had built together. I needed to figure out my next move. There was no turning back. I was ready to confront the reality of our crumbling marriage, even if it hurt me to do so. After the confrontation with Lisa, my mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. I spent hours going through our shared moments, trying to pinpoint when the cracks in our marriage began to show. The laughter we once shared had turned into silence, and the warmth in her eyes felt like a distant memory. As the days passed, Lisa continued to act normal, or at least her version of normal. She would smile at me as if nothing had happened, and I could barely look her in the eye. I felt like a stranger in my own home, a mere ghost haunting the memories of a love that had faded, but I wasn't going to let her off the hook so easily. I needed proof, something concrete that would shatter the facade she had built around herself. My first step was to do some digging. I started by looking through her phone when she left for her morning jog. I felt like a thief in my own life, but my instincts screamed that I had to know the truth. I found texts that made my stomach churn. Casual exchanges between Lisa and Derek, filled with inside jokes and flirtations. I saw photos from their time together, and every picture felt like a slap to the face. They were intimate, cozy, and full of laughter. I wanted to throw her phone against the wall, but I refrained, knowing I had to keep my composure. One night, I decided to follow her after she left for what she called another work-related dinner. My heart raced as I stayed a few cars behind her, trying to keep my cool. I could feel the anger bubbling beneath my skin, but I needed to remain calm. I didn't know what I would find, but the possibility of confrontation was looming. She drove to the same restaurant and I felt my breath quicken. This wasn't just a casual dinner. This was the place on that receipt. I parked a couple of blocks away and walked toward the entrance, my heart pounding as I approached the restaurant. Through the glass, I could see her laughing and leaning close to Derek. I felt a mix of rage and heartbreak, and it was hard to swallow. I wanted to charge in there and confront them, but something held me back. Instead, I pulled out my phone and snapped a few pictures of them together. Each click of the camera felt like a weight lifting off my shoulders. I was documenting the very evidence that would bring her deceit to light. I didn't know how I would confront her with this yet, but I knew I would. That night, I returned home, feeling a strange blend of empowerment and despair. I had what I needed, the proof I had been seeking. Yet, no matter how strong I felt in that moment, the gravity of what I was facing loomed over me like a dark cloud. Over the next few days, I continued to gather evidence. I learned their routine when they would meet and the lies Lisa was weaving. I watched her go about her daily life, still sweet and caring on the surface, but now I saw the cracks. I could sense a shift in our interactions. It was as if she was performing in a play, her lines rehearsed and delivered flawlessly. When I finally confronted her with the evidence, I was ready. I had printed the photos and saved the text messages, making sure to have everything in order. I could feel the tension building inside me as I prepared for the moment. I asked her to sit down, and when I laid the evidence in front of her, her face fell. The color drained from her cheeks, replaced with a look of shock that quickly morphed into anger. "Where did you get these?" she demanded, her voice trembling, but I could see the cracks beginning to form in her carefully constructed facade. "You know exactly where I got them, Lisa." "You've been lying to me for months," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. "Why? Why would you do this?" Her excuses came tumbling out, claims that I had been neglectful, that I didn't pay attention to her needs. The classic tale of a cheating spouse trying to shift the blame. I listened, but the weight of her words felt insincere. The betrayal cut deeper than any excuse she could conjure. "I thought we were happy," I finally said, my voice barely above a whisper. "But you've shattered everything." There she was, the woman I loved, reduced to a shadow, desperately trying to salvage the pieces of what was left. I could see the panic in her eyes as she realized the gravity of her situation. But even as I sat across from her, my heart still ached for the woman I thought I knew. The confrontation left me feeling hollow. I had expected tears, maybe even heartfelt apologies, but it only opened the floodgates to more anger and blame. I realized then that I was no longer dealing with the woman I had married. I was facing someone entirely different, someone who had chosen deceit over honesty, pleasure over commitment. I felt a storm brewing within me, a fury that had been pent up for too long. It was time to make a decision that would change everything. I had to plan my next steps, not just for my sake but for the life I wanted to rebuild. I couldn't let this betrayal define me, and I wouldn't allow Lisa's actions to dictate my future. It was time to reclaim my life, even if it meant leaving her behind. After the confrontation, I felt a strange mixture of relief and anger. I had finally laid bare the truth, yet the confrontation had left me in a state of emotional turmoil. I knew I couldn't stay in this toxic environment. It was like living in a constant state of betrayal. But I also knew I had some tough decisions to make regarding my future. I spent the next few days in a haze, going through the motions of my daily life but feeling completely detached. Friends and family began to notice the change in me. I had lost my spark, my enthusiasm for life. They would invite me out and I would decline, preferring to stay home and brood in silence. How could I explain the turmoil I was experiencing? I felt like I was living in a reality that no one else could comprehend. It was during one of those solitary nights that I began to formulate a plan. I sat down with a notebook and started writing down everything I wanted from my life moving forward, a sort of manifesto for the future I envisioned. I wanted freedom, peace of mind, and a space where I could heal from the wounds of betrayal. I realized that I didn't just want to leave Lisa. I wanted to thrive without her, to build a new life from the ashes of our marriage. One pivotal aspect of my plan involved the house we had built together. It was our dream home, the place where I thought we would grow old together. But it had also become a symbol of the life she had betrayed. I decided that I would sell the house, and I would do it on my terms. I would turn this heartache into a victory, reclaiming my space and redefining what home meant to me. I contacted a real estate agent and began the process of selling the house. It felt liberating to take control of that part of my life. As I toured the property, I found myself looking at it with fresh eyes. The master bedroom where we once shared intimate moments now felt like a prison, and the backyard where we had hosted countless barbecues seemed tainted by the memories of her betrayal. I was ready to let it all go. In the meantime, Lisa was still trying to play the part of the devoted wife, but I could see the cracks forming in her act. She would ask questions about the house, feigning concern, but I was no longer interested in her opinions. Every time she tried to engage me, I felt a wall rise between us. I was done with her lies, and I refused to let her manipulate me any longer. As the days turned into weeks, I threw myself into preparations for the sale. I spent evenings packing up our belongings, deciding which items to keep and which to sell or donate. I felt a cathartic release with each box I filled. I was shedding the weight of our past, and it felt empowering. But Lisa, of course, wasn't going to make it easy. She continued to push my buttons, trying to provoke a reaction. One night she confronted me about the house, claiming that she had a right to stay since she had helped design it. "You're being selfish, Jack. We built this together," she yelled, her voice full of false indignation. I stood my ground, calmly explaining that it was my decision to sell it. "You made your choices, Lisa, and this is mine," I said, feeling resolute. Her face grew pale, and for a moment I saw a flicker of desperation in her eyes. I realized then that she was losing control, not just over the house but over the life she had taken for granted. The next day, I signed the listing agreement and officially put the house on the market. The agent assured me it would sell quickly, given the neighborhood's desirability. I felt a sense of satisfaction wash over me, like I was finally taking back my power. As the "for sale" sign went up in front of our house, I felt a weight lifting off my shoulders. I was no longer just a victim of circumstances. I was a man on a mission. I had a vision of the life I wanted, and I was determined to make it happen, even if it meant leaving Lisa behind. With each passing day, I found strength I didn't know I had. Friends I hadn't seen in ages started reaching out, wanting to catch up. I began to reconnect with the people I had neglected while trying to save my marriage. They reminded me of who I was before the heartache. I started going out more, exploring new hobbies, and even meeting new people. It was like stepping into a new life, one where I could finally breathe again. But Lisa wasn't done yet. She would still try to reach out, asking if we could talk over coffee or if we could work things out. Each time, I would say no. I couldn't let her manipulate me back into her web of lies. I had to remain focused on my path forward, leaving her in the past. One night, as I sat in my now empty living room, I reflected on everything that had happened. I realized that the pain and betrayal had opened my eyes to a new chapter in my life. I was learning to reclaim my happiness, even if it meant letting go of the person I once loved. I knew that this journey wouldn't be easy, but I felt a sense of hope for what was to come. I was ready to write my own story, one that didn't include betrayal and lies, but rather resilience and strength. The house may have been a symbol of our past, but the future was mine to define. I was on the brink of something incredible, and I was determined to embrace it fully. As the days turned into weeks, the reality of selling the house began to set in. I had received a few offers, but none felt right. I wanted to sell it not just for the money, but to symbolize a clean break from the life I had shared with Lisa. I needed to ensure that whoever bought it appreciated the space for what it was, a beautiful home filled with potential, devoid of the memories that had haunted me. One evening, as I was reviewing the latest offers, I received a call from my real estate agent. "Jack, I think we have the right buyer for you," she said, her voice tinged with excitement. "They love the house and are willing to pay a great price. Would you like to meet them?" I agreed, eager to see who would be taking over my soon-to-be former home. The meeting was set for Saturday, and as the day approached, I felt a mixture of hope and anxiety. I wanted this to be a positive experience, a closing chapter that would allow me to fully embrace my new life. On the day of the meeting, I tidied up the house one last time, making sure it looked pristine for the prospective buyers. When they arrived, I was taken aback. The couple, Mark and Sarah, seemed genuinely excited about the home. They were young, energetic, and full of ideas. As we walked through the rooms, I could see the sparks of inspiration in their eyes. I felt something I hadn't in a long time: hope. After the tour, we sat down to discuss the details. They shared their vision for the house, and I couldn't help but smile as they talked about transforming the backyard into a vibrant garden. It reminded me of how Lisa and I once had dreams for this place. But this time, it was refreshing. I felt a sense of closure as I listened to them, knowing that they were excited to create their memories where I had once built mine. As we finalized the sale, Mark and Sarah mentioned wanting to have a housewarming party once they moved in. It struck me as odd at first. This was the home I had shared with Lisa after all, but then it felt right. It felt like a new beginning, not just for them but for me as well. With the house officially sold, I felt a rush of exhilaration. I was finally free. That evening, I celebrated with a few close friends at a local bar. We toasted to new beginnings and the adventures that lay ahead. I was surrounded by laughter and support, and for the first time in a long time I felt truly happy. But Lisa was still lurking around, attempting to manipulate the situation. After the sale, she showed up at my door unannounced, looking desperate and vulnerable. "Jack, can we talk? I miss you," she implored, her voice shaky. I felt a flicker of sympathy, but it was quickly extinguished by the reality of what she had done. "I don't think there's anything left to say, Lisa," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "You made your choices and I've made mine. It's time for both of us to move on." Her expression shifted from pleading to frustration. "You're being unreasonable. We can still fix this." It was maddening how she still thought we could return to the way things were. I stood firm, refusing to let her guilt trip me again. I began to realize that Lisa's attempts to reconnect were less about love and more about control. She was losing ground and she was scared. I felt the need to protect myself from her manipulation, but it was hard to ignore the emotional scars she had left. As the weeks went by, I buried myself in my new routine. I found a small apartment not far from the old house. It was modest, but it felt like a sanctuary. I filled it with new furniture, colors, and decor that reflected my newfound independence. I even started exploring hobbies I had long neglected. I signed up for a painting class, something I always wanted to try but never found the time for. The first class was nerve-wracking. I was surrounded by strangers, and I felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. But as the instructor walked us through the basics of painting, I found a sense of calm wash over me. Each brushstroke felt like a release, a way to channel my emotions and the tumultuous journey I had just endured. In class, I met a woman named Emma. She was warm, friendly, and always had a smile on her face. We started chatting during breaks, sharing stories about our lives and our passions. I felt a connection with her, and it was refreshing. For the first time in months, I was opening up again. Our conversations began to extend beyond the classroom. We found ourselves grabbing coffee after class and sharing more about our lives. Emma was genuinely interested in getting to know me, and I felt like I was slowly coming back to life. The more time we spent together, the more I realized that there was joy to be found again. But even amidst this new spark of hope, Lisa was still a dark presence in my mind. She would occasionally text me, trying to stir up old feelings or guilt me into responding. I blocked her number, realizing I had to protect this new chapter from her toxic influence. I couldn't let her poison the happiness I was beginning to cultivate. With each passing day, I could feel the remnants of my old life fading. I was no longer just a man defined by his marriage. I was a man reclaiming his identity. I was ready to step into the next phase of my life, one that promised new adventures, friendships, and maybe even love. It felt invigorating, like a breath of fresh air after being trapped in a storm. The transformation from betrayal to empowerment wasn't instant. It took time and effort. But I was finally on the other side, ready to embrace a future without shadows. I had learned the hard way about trust and love, but I also learned about resilience and the strength that comes from healing. It was time to fully move on. I was no longer a victim. I was a survivor, and I was determined to thrive. As I settled into my new life, I found myself embracing the freedom I had fought so hard to reclaim. My days felt fuller and more meaningful, and I finally understood the importance of surrounding myself with people who truly cared about me. Emma and I continued to grow closer, and every interaction felt like a step toward healing. One Sunday, I invited Emma over to my apartment for dinner. I wanted to cook for her, to show her that I was ready to share my life with someone new, someone who wasn't tied to the pain of my past. I spent the afternoon preparing a simple yet delicious meal, feeling a sense of nervous excitement as I set the table. I wanted everything to be perfect. When she arrived, I was struck by how bright she looked, her smile infectious and warm. We shared laughs over the meal, reminiscing about our favorite painting techniques and our aspirations. It felt so refreshing to engage with someone who had no connection to my previous life. As we cleared the table, I felt a spark of hope that perhaps this was the beginning of something beautiful. After dinner, we moved to the living room, where we continued to talk and laugh. I found myself drawn to her in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. As the evening progressed, our conversation became more intimate, and I could sense the chemistry building between us. It was a thrilling feeling, one that reminded me that I could still experience joy and connection after everything I had been through. As the night wound down, Emma leaned in and placed her hand on mine. "Jack, I really enjoy spending time with you," she said softly, her eyes sparkling with sincerity. I could feel my heart race as I searched her gaze for any hint of hesitation. "You're a really amazing person, and I'd love to see where this goes." In that moment, I felt a wave of emotion wash over me. It was a mix of excitement and fear, the fear of opening my heart again, of risking it all. But I realized that I couldn't let the past dictate my future. I wanted to embrace this new opportunity to explore the possibilities that lay ahead. "Me too, Emma," I finally replied, feeling a smile stretch across my face. "I'd love to see where this takes us." As the weeks turned into months, Emma and I began to explore our relationship. We went on hikes, visited art galleries, and even took a weekend trip to a nearby beach town. Each new experience added layers to our connection, and I found myself falling for her in ways I hadn't anticipated. She was kind, supportive, and she listened to me, a refreshing contrast to the dismissive attitude I had encountered with Lisa. But just as I was beginning to fully embrace this new chapter, Lisa made a move that rocked my newfound stability. One evening, I received an unexpected message from her. "Can we talk? I really need to see you. I've been doing a lot of thinking," it read. My heart sank. I hadn't heard from her in months, and I had been so focused on moving forward that the thought of her re-entering my life filled me with dread. I knew that I didn't want to go back to the emotional turmoil she had brought into my life, yet I felt a pang of curiosity mixed with fear. After a sleepless night, I decided to meet her. I needed closure, if only to put that chapter behind me for good. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop, a neutral ground where I could maintain my composure. As I walked in, I saw her sitting at a table, her expression uncertain and vulnerable. "Jack," she said softly as I approached. I could see the subtle signs of stress etched on her face. "Thank you for meeting me." I took a deep breath and sat across from her. "What's going on, Lisa?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. "I've been reflecting on everything on what I did," she began, her voice shaky. "I know I hurt you and I regret it. I've been seeing a therapist and I'm trying to understand why I did what I did." Her words pierced through me. Part of me wanted to feel sympathy for her, but the other part screamed that this was too little, too late. She had shattered my trust, and I couldn't simply put the pieces back together because she was experiencing guilt. "I appreciate you reaching out, Lisa, but this is hard for me," I said, feeling my defenses rise. "You can't just expect me to accept your apologies after everything that happened." Tears welled in her eyes. "I know, I'm not asking for us to go back to how things were. I needed to let you know that I'm sorry. I've been trying to work on myself, and I realize how much I lost." Her words hung in the air, and I felt a mix of anger and sadness. I couldn't deny the impact her actions had on my life, but I also recognized that her journey towards self-improvement was her own. I was no longer the man willing to carry that burden for her. "I'm glad you're working on yourself, but I can't be part of it, Lisa," I replied firmly. "I've moved on from you. My life is going in a different direction now." She nodded, the tears spilling down her cheeks. "I understand," she whispered. "I just hope one day you can forgive me, even if it's from a distance." As I left the coffee shop, I felt a sense of clarity wash over me. Meeting Lisa one last time had allowed me to finally close the door on that chapter of my life. I was no longer tethered to her, and I could finally breathe without the weight of her betrayal holding me back. That same evening, I met Emma for dinner. As we sat together, sharing stories and laughter, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. I had endured heartache, but it had led me to this moment, a moment where I could genuinely be myself, without fear of betrayal or pain. I could see a future unfolding before me, one that was not defined by my past, but rather by the promise of new beginnings. I was ready to embrace love once more, to let someone in without the fear of being hurt. I had found my strength amid the ashes of my marriage, and I was determined to nurture the connection I had with Emma. As I held her hand that night, I understood the significance of what I had accomplished. I had transformed my pain into empowerment, and I was ready to write the next chapter of my life, one filled with hope, love, and endless possibilities. As I continued to build my relationship with Emma, I felt more alive than I had in years. Every moment we spent together felt like a new adventure, a chance to rediscover myself in a way I didn't think was possible after everything with Lisa. I was learning to embrace vulnerability again, to let someone into my life without the fear of being betrayed. One crisp autumn afternoon, we decided to go for a hike in nearby national park. The leaves were a brilliant mosaic of colors, and the air was fresh and invigorating. As we walked along the winding trail, I couldn't help but feel a sense of peace. It was days like this that reminded me of the beauty in life, something I had lost sight of for too long. We reached a scenic overlook, and while we paused to take in the view, I turned to Emma. "You know, I never thought I would feel this way again after everything with Lisa," I admitted, my voice laced with sincerity. "But you've brought so much joy back into my life. Thank you for being you." She smiled, her eyes sparkling. "You deserve this happiness, Jack. I'm just glad I can be a part of it." As I looked at her, I felt an overwhelming wave of gratitude wash over me. I realized that I was not just moving on from my past. I was actively creating a future filled with love and possibility. I had chosen to reclaim my life, and I was no longer defined by the pain of betrayal. As we sat on that overlook, surrounded by nature's beauty, I made a decision. I wanted to solidify our bond and take a step toward a deeper commitment. I had learned from my past mistakes, and I was determined not to rush into anything, but I felt that this was the right moment. "Emma," I said, my heart racing as I took her hand, "I want us to be more than just a casual relationship. I want to build something meaningful together, a partnership where we support each other through thick and thin. I'm ready to commit to you." Her expression softened, and I could see the surprise in her eyes. "Jack, I feel the same way. I've been hoping you would say that." In that moment, the weight of my past began to lift even more. It was a beautiful reminder that healing was not just about letting go of old hurts, but also about embracing new beginnings. I was ready to invest in this relationship wholeheartedly, to nurture the love that was blossoming between us. As autumn turned to winter, our relationship deepened. Emma and I shared laughter, adventures, and even quiet moments of vulnerability. I introduced her to my friends, and she fit seamlessly into my life. We celebrated birthdays, holidays, and ordinary days, each moment weaving us closer together. But even as I reveled in this newfound happiness, Lisa was still a lingering shadow. One night I received a call from her. "Jack, I need to talk to you," she said, her voice trembling on the other end of the line. I felt my heart race. I hadn't heard from her in months, and part of me braced for the emotional turmoil that had once defined our conversations. "Is it about the past, Lisa?" I asked, trying to maintain my calm. "Yes, but it's also about moving forward," she replied, her voice shaky. "I've been working on myself, and I realize I need to take responsibility for my actions. I just wanted to apologize one last time and let you know that I've started to change." I listened, feeling a mixture of sympathy and detachment. I appreciated that she was seeking growth, but I also understood that my life was no longer intertwined with hers. I had moved on, and while I wished her well, I wasn't interested in rehashing old wounds. "Thank you for saying that, Lisa. I'm glad you're working on yourself, but I think it's best for both of us if we continue to focus on our own lives," I responded firmly. After hanging up, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. Speaking to Lisa one last time had given me the closure I needed. I recognized that I had truly moved on, that I had redefined my life on my own terms. With the new year approaching, Emma and I sat down to talk about our goals and dreams for the future. We shared our hopes, aspirations, and even our fears. It was refreshing to communicate openly, and I felt excited about what lay ahead. As we celebrated New Year's Eve surrounded by friends, I held Emma close as the clock struck midnight. The cheers and laughter echoed around us, but all I could focus on was her. I leaned in and whispered, "Happy New Year, Emma. I can't wait to see what this year brings for us." She smiled back, her eyes shining with possibilities. "Me too, Jack. This is just the beginning." Reflecting on the past year, I realized how far I had come. I had transformed my pain into strength, my heartbreak into resilience. The journey had not been easy, but it had taught me invaluable lessons about love, trust, and the importance of self-worth. As the fireworks lit up the night sky, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. I had learned that while betrayal can break you, it can also pave the way for growth and renewal. I was finally embracing the life I had always dreamed of, filled with love, laughter, and the promise of a bright future. I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, I was ready to face them head-on, not as a victim but as a survivor, and with Emma by my side, I felt more hopeful than ever. The best was yet to come.